with our fearless leader, John McGrath and Troy Malcolm, our leadership team, our amazing team who have been keeping us up over the last few weeks on webinars every single morning with McGrath, keeping us energized and our mindset right. I'm really happy that you guys are on today. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know you're busy with all your Zoom chats.
Thank you. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
Let's say keeping you up, Tiff. I assume that means keeping you uplifted, not awake
Uplifted.
at night.
Yeah.
Just for clarity,
no.
your audience.
Exactly. Yeah. Keeping us uplifted and positive during this time and optimistic, because we should be. So I'm really happy to get you both on, and just let's have this opportunity to just pick your brains about how things are going in the market with McGrath, how we're adapting and pivoting, as you said, John, to this kind of crazy time and the changes going around us. So first, from your perspective, how have things changed the last couple of weeks in your eyes? How are we doing?
I'll kick off, Troy, and then if you can add, it'd be great. So yeah. I think in many ways, Tiff, we're very much business as usual with the appropriate protocols. As you've been experiencing, listening to the webinars, most of our very, very top agents, they're acting as if nothing's changed except the protocols and the distancing and so forth. And we've been really delighted, surprised, but delighted that so many people are just getting on with their lives, not just our agents, but our customers. And we're getting statistics that somewhere between 50, well, probably 30 to 50% of the buyers that were active before the corona outbreak are still active. And we've done a number of formal and informal surveys saying, you know, do you still want to buy, or would you rather sit on the sidelines for the next little bit, which is totally understandable. And about 50% are saying, yeah, we think we'll sit on the sidelines, whether that's just through uncertainty, fear, or job security, or even unemployment in some unfortunate instances. So there's that. But the other 50% are saying, no, let us know when something comes up. So, and that did surprise me, because I knew, having been through GFC and 9/11 and so forth, and I've seen markets come grind to an absolute halt. But with this one, we are finding people are continuing to want to buy. The prices we're finding in the main, in some areas, to be fair, there's been some adjustments, relatively minor, to pre-corona values, but in many other areas, even up to some of the top homes around, sort of the harbourside and waterside areas of the big cities, the values have held up very, very well. So I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone that is in pain or has a business that's challenged or has lost their job, or the worst case of all, someone that's unwell. But we are finding that, I think you said in the introduction, Tiffany, you should be optimistic. This will pass. Many of us have been through these things before. It's unfortunate, but for most Australians, 99% of Australians, we will get through this alive and well. And even businesses that have been damaged, many of them will pivot and re-emerge. So I think there is, whether it's human spirit or Australian spirit or a bit of both, there seems to be a great deal of future thinking beyond the virus. And, a lot of statistics are saying that the virus may well peak in terms of new cases in the next fortnight or so, which on the other side of a peak is a decline. And that would be good if we can get some good news out. And then if people sensibly continue to follow the government. I'm going to have a shout out to the government. I think they've done an extraordinary job. As I think, Julia Gillard and the previous government did in GFC, or in the last market correction. I think that the speed of a response and the generosity to most about the response to support small business, medium business, individuals, tenants, landlords, and tenants and landlords, there's still a bit of clarity required probably in the next few days. But I think it's been great leadership by Scott Morrison, and I think it's going to be the saviour of this economic part of the country. We're all going to get through this physically. When I said 99% of us will, but we need to have a country to go back to normal business afterwards. And I think that the government has acted in a way that is suggest. I mean, my view is, Kev, I think we're in lockdown in a sense, but Morrison has been very smart not to have used that word. But I think 66% of the things that other countries have done to effectively lock themselves down, we're doing. I mean, we're saying no socialising, Don't go to work unless you have to. Only go outside to exercise. Don't congregate with more than one other person. If you're one other person, stay 2 metres away, etc., etc. Shut down the congregation points, which of course is horrific for those in hospitality and pubs and clubs, but I think it is going to be a major part. So I think we've been very smart the way the government has managed this without terrifying people by saying you're all now locked in your houses and you can't come out, which does feel and sound draconian in a sense. We're all locked in our houses and can't come out. Troy, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree, John. On a recent company webinar, we were speaking about the old world and the new world. And for real estate professionals and a lot of other industries, this is just the new world. So some of the things that we may wanted to have done in our businesses in the old world, we've had to fast track and actually implement over the past couple of weeks. So it's quite nice in some respects. And again, not taking away from the health crisis that we're currently in and obviously the adversity that's created for a number of people. The ones that are watching this webinar, there's some great outcomes for us. Some of the best businesses have been built in times of crisis. Why? Because you really get essential information and you make sure that you're working to what the client really needs. And that's what we've been saying a lot to our team. Now, what does that mean for clients watching this? Well, there's great opportunities out there. Buyers that still need to buy, they're out there in the market and they're actively looking for properties. Sellers that need to sell and move on to the next part of their journey, or in some cases, John, we heard recently, capitalize on buying a better property at this time, see it as a great opportunity in the market because they can have more authentic and direct conversations with their real estate professional, but also the buyers out there looking. So yes, it has changed, but like you said, it's business as usual. And a lot of our top performers, and Tiff is included in this, a lot of our top performers are finding new ways and better ways to really connect with their clients, but connect with deals as well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Tiff, on the back of that, the whole digital environment, like now we're having this conversation, which we may or may not have had outside of this event, but you know, the daily webinars we're doing, the coaching and mentoring, the face-to-face meetings with clients that aren't really face-to-face, but they kind of give you that same experience. I think in a sense, the world's changed forever. That when you think about how many times you jumped in a car, travelled half an hour, found a park, took 10 minutes later, arrived at the property or the office for a face-to-face meeting for 20 minutes and then reversed it. And then an hour and a half, 2 hours later, it took for a 20-minute meeting, which can now take 20 minutes if you utilise technology. So it's forcing us to use technology that was there, but kind of many people were kind of shelving it, saying, well, I'd rather just meet you face-to-face. So I don't think the face-to-face, we are in a physical industry to a degree, real estate, that the bricks and mortar bit is important. But what are some of the things that I know your colleagues have done, Tiffany? Things like not just face-to-face meetings with Zoom, that works, and FaceTime, but virtual open homes. Some of our teams are doing great jobs with taking buyers, courtesy of their iPhone, and they're moving around the property and showing them rooms, and they're answering questions as they come in live stream on things like Facebook platform, which is great. Virtual auctions. So the government came in and they said, you can't hold open home. Physically, from a real estate perspective, the major changes were you can't hold open homes and you can't do an auction. Well, we challenged that the next day. The next morning, we went to the minister and we said, look, we have a virtual auction platform that we utilise, which we think is the intent of what you're trying to do. We think it does it, but still allows people to transact. And they very sensibly said, okay, that's a great point, keep doing it. So last weekend, we did a number of what would have been on-site auctions, and they were changed to virtual auction, where the agent went to the property that was being auctioned, the vendor was there, and the agent, separated 2 meters apart, of course, and the auctioneer called through this virtual platform, and bidders who were sitting elsewhere and bidding virtually, listening, watching and bidding. Well, again, that platform is kind of there but not being used very often, but I think this will make that much more a reality for people. And I think people will still, after this is over, want to go to the auction, inspect the property physically, go to the auction physically in the main. But a lot of people who can't do it, they're interstate, they're overseas, they're busy doing something else, they'll be able to be at their cafe where they might be working, and they'll be able to punch in their bids. So I think that, you know, once the negativity of the closures and the financial issues and the health issues are the dust has settled and we've kind of rectified ourselves as a community, I think we'll find some good things. I mean, they say that every cloud's got a silver lining. This is a pretty dark cloud for many, and I don't want to be insensitive to that, but I think you've got to, as an individual, you have to focus on, well, what are the benefits? How does this serve us as a business, as an individual? Even in virtual lockdown, or if there is to even be a more stringent lockdown, I mean, I've said to Tiffany, you and your colleagues, I mean, there's never been a better time that, you know, that you can sharpen the saw. You can do some personal growth things. You can take some online courses. You can practice, you know, a whole range of skills we need as good agents in the marketplace. And if we are forced to do that, it will give us time to do things we often don't have time to do. So, you know, I'm not deluded that there's not pain out there, and I'm very sensitive to that. And I have a number of people that I know that have lost jobs and whose businesses are under great pressure. I don't know anyone at this point that's had the coronavirus, but I'm sure I will before this is all over. And the only good news out of all that is most people are actually overcoming it, other than the very elderly, where the percentage mortality rate is much higher. So I think that in the main, as an industry, we've responded well. Hopefully as a company, we've responded even better, that just shifting to digital, shifting to virtual, but continuing to do business for those that want to. Now, there are some people who have chosen to have an enforced holiday, and I get that, and that's their choice. But the vast majority of our team, both agents and support team members, and of course property managers, have continued work business as usual. And it's really been inspiring for me as the founder of the business to actually, because part of my job is to ring around each day and you know, congratulate people on great results and you know, just check in on people in general. And the spirits are high, the views are optimistic, people are productive, people have been incredibly creative, and I think all those things, you know, do come off the back of this. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see where things go from here. And I have a few views which I'm happy to share, but I do think if we stop focusing on the media, and I've told many times every daily webinar we do, I just say stop reading the media. If you need to check in for 5 minutes a day to see if there's any changes that affect you from a legislation and a health and safety point of view, do it. But don't immerse yourself in it, because all that is going to do is depress people. And if you're in a depressed state, you can't do your best work, you can't be the best parent, you can't be the best team member. So it's very important, I think, for people to shield themselves from as much negativity as possible. It won't be possible to shield yourself 100%, but I reckon you can shield yourself 95%.
I think that's so true, John. I think also through this period, what I'm seeing, and this is being a bit of an opportunity to have more quality conversations with people too. Really deep conversations, whereas you may have had, you know, buyers kind of calling for, you know, simple questions, maybe just shopping around, not really that serious. Maybe you're just chatting away and filling your day with all these calls. Now it's actually really deep and impactful conversations with clients, with friends, you know, with your loved ones as well. There's still buyers out there, and the buyers that are out there are quality buyers. Those people are serious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one question. Yeah, John, I was going to say, that's one question, Tiffany, that we get a lot is, have all the buyers stopped? And John, you know, we speak to clients, and we know a lot of our team will be speaking with clients about what we call a two-step approach, or a soft listing. And, you know, what things do we need to prepare to get the property to be delivered and introduced and exposed to those clients that, you know, buyers may be looking. They may want to do something that's slightly off market before it goes to a full campaign, given the changes that we've seen. And John, we were talking to a number of our team members about, you know, what are the essential elements that we need to get right if you are preparing your home before it goes to market. And I think, Tiffany, that's a question that you've received. You mentioned to me earlier a lot about, you know, getting photos done, getting a video done of the property, making sure a floor plan's there. So we've got all the collateral and information ready to go should that opportunity present itself, that you can get it. Speed is still the new currency in regards to getting it to buyers, so they can make decisions and be guided that, you know, the property is there, and if they're willing to buy and they want to buy it, it's there for them.
Yeah, and also too, you know, on the other hand of the coin, like getting your home and prepped ready to be prepared to list when the time is right for you. Maybe it's 3 months down the track. Maybe you're not quite ready. Let's get a building and pest inspection done sooner. Let's rectify some of those things, get the kids involved. Let's paint the back porch, things like that. You can actually prep and be ready, and talk to your finance broker as well and understand what options you have available to you right now, where you stand, maybe what the worst and best case scenarios could be, so that you're most prepared, right? So this is the time to do that. And also too, you mentioned, Troy, you know, agents, we're still working just as hard. And I think a lot of people may not see that, okay, I've seen actually quite a lot of listings come on. There's still, you know, a lot of activity in our marketplace. We may see a little bit of a slowdown in terms of that over the next, you know, coming months. But if we don't see listings coming up, it doesn't mean that deals and transactions aren't happening, right? We're still matching sellers to buyers, and we can do that soft launch approach, just like you said, Troy. We can prep your home, we can have it available and have the virtual assets ready to go so that we can bring in qualified buyers and match them to your property. So that's still happening.
Well, and you're right, Tiffany, the soft launch or off-market listings, as some people call them, continue. But as are auctions and full launch auctions, that, you know, some people have said to me, why would you waste the time and money with an auction? Well, is you can continue to sell. Yes, there'll be a smaller buyer pool, call it 50%, but they're still there. Karen Terry from our Forestville office just in Sydney just listed a property for auction last week, and then 11 days later she's closed it, sold it, exchanged it, sold some, went up yesterday. There's another one of our agents in Coogee sold a property to a buyer that's never seen it, who just looked at the virtual tour, they looked at the floor plans, and then they decided to move ahead. They were comfortable. So that's how good a lot of the virtual technology is, that people have sufficient comfort to actually buy it. The buyer was overseas, but they still had the comfort in doing that. So yeah, I do think that there is business to be had if you're in the right mindset and you have the right tools, as Troy has just said. There'll be business to be had. I think that going forward, as we could future pace a bit, I think residential property is going to come into its own yet again, which it tends to do after every tragic scenario, whether it's 9/11 or tech wreck or the GFC. Share markets drop 30, 40, 50%. Property drops 5 or 10. Share market, property has mortgages, so banks hang in there with their clients. And again, I think not only has our government done a great job, I think our banks, who have gone through a bit of a hard time the last couple of years with the Royal Commission. So I think they do an extraordinary job, as they did in the GFC, standing behind their customers. So, of course, in the share market, the loan, the equivalent of a mortgage is a margin loan. And when the market drops to a certain degree, you have to start selling your shares no matter what. And that often at 50%. Whereas with your property, if you bought a property for $1 million 6 months ago and you have an $800,000 mortgage, even if the drop to the value of 800 or less, banks don't force you to sell up as long as you can continue to service your loan. So I think that cash in this right economic environment is king. I think there's going to be a lot of commercial, retail, industrial tenants that get almost zero rent or perhaps have extended vacancies for a long, long time. I mean, if you are sitting there, the owner or landlord of those types of properties, you may be looking at tenant vacates. It could be a year or two. Whereas we know with residential, even if there is, and it's to be defined, but even if there's a little bit of give back or negotiation between tenant and landlord, and some have already done that, by the way, some of our tenants have rung up asking for some sort of relief, and we've taken the position to the landlord, and the landlord has said, yeah, I'm happy to do whatever, you know, take 25% off the rent or give them a 1 month rent holiday or whatever. Everyone's doing something that works for both parties, which I think is another good part of this, is people have been, in the main, very humane and reasonable. So I think that residential property, where everyone needs a roof over their head, and even if there's a very minute short-term adjustment to rents, generally speaking, rents hold or keep going up in the medium term. You're not going to have a 2-bedroom unit in Bulimba that's going to be vacant for a year. Might be vacant for a fortnight if you're unlucky. So I think that overall, this really focuses on the benefit of residential property. 70% of residential property in Australia is owner-occupied. So that means, by definition, this massive asset class, most of the people that own it live in it. And therefore, those that aren't unfortunate, most can even hold through this period with discussions with banks perhaps a little bit of deferment of your repayments, which the banks have offered. I think it's going to end up being another great asset class. And right now, with the Australian residential property, I think that people are seeing one of the benefits of this lucky country is we actually are a little bit away from everyone else, which in times like this can be beneficial. It's not so great when you go on European or your American holiday once a year, a long bloody way. But putting that aside, it shows that. And the other thing is the Australian currency is down at the moment, and a lot of expats are coming back in and investing, and a lot of overseas buyers are also eyeing off Australia again as a great asset class. Both the Australian dollar, which is popular globally, right now a bit deflated, but generally very popular and seen as a very solid currency. And investors are just going to keep coming back and keep buying Australian residential property. So I think in the main, residential property will come out a net significant winner as we look back on this situation. Troy?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I love that statistic, John, that you just mentioned, that 70% is owner-occupied within Australian residential real estate. I really like that. It's safe, and as you mentioned, the stock market, that can be volatile at times. So a lot of people in times like this, and history would say throughout the tech crash and the GFC and things like that, property was the safe haven that a lot of parents, mums and dads, family members, individuals saw residential real estate as the safe investment. And I think many positives, but one of the main positives that come out of this will be, again, that residential real estate will come into its own. So just to amplifying what John said, it will come into its own and people will see it as a really sound investment. Tiff, as we start to kind of wrap up, if we can, there's so many questions that I know you've been receiving on a daily basis from your clients and different conversations you've had in the market. It would be great to get John's insights into maybe, one or two that are deciding whether it's the right time to buy, whether it's the right time to sell. I know we've covered it off a little bit, but almost like a 3-step plan on, how, if you want to do something right now, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, let's talk about, if you're looking to buy right now, what advice would you have for them?
Look, I think in many markets, Tiffany, around Australia, particularly Sydney and Melbourne, and to a degree, but slightly lesser degree, Brisbane, there's been a lot of pressure, huge demand and a lot of pressure, and prices have gone up quite a bit over the last few years. And I think for buyers, if you are, the caveat is, if you are not concerned, if you continue to be employed and you're not concerned about unemployment, I think it's a really solid time to be buying, because you're competing with half the people you used to. So the premium prices that were being achieved a few months ago are not going to be very prevalent. I think the price is still healthy, as I said, but the premium prices. So if you find a home that you liked 2 months ago and you turned up at Bulimba and said, well, I want to bid for that, and there was 8 other bidders, it could well go 200,000 above expectation. That's unlikely to happen in this environment. It'll probably still go for about what it's worth. Or you might even find some situations where there's a slight discount built in because of the circumstance of the seller. So I think from a buyer's perspective, there's a window of opportunity to dive back into the market that many thought had perhaps outpaced them. So that's a good thing. The other thing is, most people, it's not like you trade shares, shares are often traded, weekly or monthly. You buy a property for a decade, usually, whether it's investment or something to live in. So you're never going to pick the top, you're never going to pick the bottom. I think now, if you say, I'm going to buy today in, April 2020, and I'm probably going to sell in April 2028, 29, you're going to double your value, history will tell us. As long as you hold it for a cycle, and a cycle is generally 7 to 8 years from any given point in time. So I think that if you wish to stay on the sidelines because you have any concern about security, employment, your business, I totally understand and support that, and I think that's sensible. If you're in a role, and let's just say we spoke this morning at our webinar about people who are employed by the government that have generally got very safe tenure, hopefully in their jobs, they may well find it's a fantastic time to buy because they don't have that fear over. So I think as long as we would never encourage anyone to overstretch themselves or buy if they had, some material uncertainty about their job security. But if that's not you, I think that's probably where the 50% went. The other 50%, it's a good time to be buying I mean, real estate in inner Brisbane, inner Sydney, inner Melbourne, beachside, riverside, all of the prime locations is going to be in hot demand forever. Brisbane's population is growing, as is Sydney and the Goldie and Melbourne and ACT. And most people that come into new communities are looking for certain things: proximity to the CBD, proximity to the waterways, lifestyle features, arts and culture. And of course, you know, the areas that you work and that most of our offices work around, the metropolitan regions, are all offering that. So the demand for that's never going to go down. It's actually only going to go, and there's only so many properties available around the river or near the beaches or in a 15 commute to the CBD. So I think that as much as some people would, you know, that aren't in the market probably would hope that things came down, I think that things are just going to keep going up indefinitely. I think the closer you are to the city, the waterways, the infrastructure, the lifestyle amenities, the more they're going to go up. The curve will be even steeper. So I'd take the opportunity, if you're safe and point, to just keep looking. Don't feel a panic. I don't think was that you or me, Troy? There's a thud there of some description. I don't think the market's, you know, is about to take off. I don't think the day they announce that COVID's over, we're going to see a 20% surge in prices. So we don't need any hysteria like that either. I do think there will be a surge of optimism and people will begin to out, and the option numbers will definitely increase for sure. But I don't think we're going to see massive jump in prices. So if you're there, you've spoken to your financial broker, go out, find the right home, bid with confidence, buy it with a 10-year view, and you're going to do very well.
Excellent. Totally agree with that. And also too, you know, we mentioned on our webinar this morning with Alex, it's a great time to upgrade as well. And buy and sell in the same market is always the best way and the best approach, of course. So that's always a good opportunity, is now for that. And what would you advise to sellers? You know, people are still going to have to sell, and maybe they are those people who are upgrading and changing up and changing or downgrading right now. What advice would you give to them right now?
If you're buying and selling in a similar market, it doesn't really matter whether it's at the peak or the bottom. It doesn't really matter. So if you're thinking of selling to buy, or you've already sold, I think that as long as you're transacting roughly the same market, give or take 6 months, it's fine. So you're sitting there thinking of selling, your price of your property is either probably what it was worth a couple of months ago or down a little bit. If it's down a little bit, you're going to still buy something else that's down a little bit. So I think, as Troy said before, just make sure that the home is beautifully presented. I mean, we talk about pricing, presentation and marketing are the three things that sell or don't sell a home. So make sure you have a good, robust conversation with your agent around what do you think the real price range is now? And beware of the agents that are kind of inflating your price to make you feel good in the moment. Deal with agents that actually have their finger on the pulse of the market and have the authenticity to tell you the truth around what's happening in prices. Presentation critical. Tiffany, you mentioned before styling. We think it's critical. And we love styling our homes because we think that every dollar you spend in styling generally gets you a 5 times return. Spend $5,000 in marketing presentation, you might get a $20,000 to $50,000 increase. And the third thing is marketing. Make sure you have all, especially right now, make sure you have the virtual tour, the floor plan, if it's a video or virtual tour, one of the two. Utilize social media, all of the things that I know that we're coaching our team at the moment. The very best tools. You should never skimp on marketing or presentation. Most people, as I've just said, sell their home every decade. Make sure you get the best agent for the job and you have the best presentation and the strongest marketing. I think it's a find. If you'd have asked me 3 weeks ago, John, you know, if a friend of mine came and said, "Oh, do you think I should go to the market now? This COVID thing's just really starting to hit the fan." I'd have said, "Look, I think I'd wait for a while. Let's see what happens." Right now, 3 weeks into this, I think that we're in a position where we can say buyers are out there, they're buying confidently, they're paying similar prices. There are, by the way, there's some bargain hunters, of course, and that's their prerogative. But transactions at this point are not going to bargain hunters in the main. They're going to people that are prepared to pay fair market. So, yeah, I wouldn't be hesitant about selling now. And again, I respect those that are going to sit on the sidelines because some people might be watching this and say, "Okay, I hear all that, but I want to have a bit more certainty, so I'm going to wait for a month or two." That's totally fine. But I think if you do, for whatever personal reason, feel compelled to go to market, or in fact have to, some people, through often negative circumstances, have to go to market right now. They might have business issues or whatever. I wouldn't be panicking. If you have the right agent, the right marketing, the right presentation, I think it's a fine time to go to market. The property that I think will do really well off the back of this, I think investment property will. People will say, I want to take my shares out of BHP and put them into investment property. You know, BHP came down 20, 30, 40%, property stayed about the same, you know, those sort of things. So I think investment property will do very well off the back of this. The other property is regional lifestyle property. I think a lot of people have realised you can almost do what you do nowadays from anywhere in the world, as we're demonstrating here, in 3 different locations and 2 different states, and having hopefully a meaningful conversation that's just as good as if we're in the same place, really, to be honest. So I think, you know, people looking at some of the lifestyle areas, perhaps within 90 minutes of the major big cities, I think those areas will also do well. It's also going to suit a lot of downsizers. There's no doubt that a lot of people's superannuation funds are going to be hit in a negative sense by this coronavirus and the share market correction. And some of those might be looking to make a sea change or a tree change. I think for your market, Tiffany, there's going to be a lot of Sydney-siders that will, you know, look at how do I cash up a bit? All my cash is now. Okay, I've still got some in my super, but it's not as healthy as it looked. I've got a home in Sydney that's quite modest and it's worth $2.5 million. I can shift north of the border and get a beautiful lifestyle for maybe $1.25 million in many instances, or even less in some areas. So I think that Southeast Queensland will be a beneficiary of this. I think investment property, I think lifestyle and regional property, where people recognise they can live the life of their dreams and they can still telecommute and occasionally commute to a major city. So I think that will be the major winners.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think we're ready for you guys from Sydney and everyone coming up north to Queensland. You can come anytime and settle up here. It's beautifully sunny and warm. So can't wait for that. We've started to see that over the last few years, and that'll probably, like you said, increase even further. So that's good news. But like, just as you said, John, I think one of the biggest takeaways, I think, from what you just said is no matter what you're doing, always make sure, especially now, to have the right agent on your side and have someone really working with you as a partner. Because, you know, as we know with McGrath agents like we are, we work with empathy, integrity, and care no matter what. We're always going to be there with your best interests at heart. We're going to walk you through and be by your side through this entire process. If it's now you're buying or now you're selling, or if it's 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, it's best to really enlist someone now that you really trust and get prepped and have everything in a row. Be prepared to make the move when you're ready, right?
Yeah, look, 100%. And sometimes I've had friends ring me that are looking to sell a property in an area that we don't service. And they've said, look, you haven't got a McGrath office here, but I'm speaking to X, Y, and Z. And, you know, they describe them and they sometimes send me their submissions. And they say, yeah, this one's more expensive. They're probably better, they're more expensive. I say, go with the best one. At the end of the day, the difference between the highest fee and the lowest is probably 1%. You know, maybe someone's 3%, someone's 2%, someone's 2.5%, someone's 1.5%. The difference between a great agent who's a master at his or her skill, a black belt of selling real estate, if you will, and someone else can be 10%. I mean, you know,
100%.
someone that knows how to market, present, negotiate, auction, all of those, and the right advice can easily be 10% differential. So what I say to my friends, they ring me and I just say, just choose the best agent and say to them, just give me the best deal that you give your good customers, and where do I sign? Because that is the truth as I see it, that there's nothing like having the best agent. If you went in for an operation or a law, or you had a trial that you had to appear there, you want the best barrister, you want the best surgeon, you want the best, you know, this is not saving a life, but this is a very important transaction. Invariably, it's the most important and biggest asset someone will ever own. And for most people, 70%, every dollar they get is capital gains tax free. So it's one of those very few areas or assets you can quarantine. So find the best agent, and if you've got to pay an extra 0.5% or 1%, and I even say to people, if you find one of our agents and they're a bit cheaper than someone else and you think the other person is good, you should go with the other person. Because that is the key. You have to have the best agent in your corner You have to be able to trust what they say. They have to be giving you the best advice. They need to be creative. They need to be disciplined. They need to be strong negotiators, great auction agents if you are auctioning. So yeah, I think it's a really important asset, and you have to protect it with the best agent.
Yeah, especially now, right? You know, in terms of seeing opportunities and thinking outside the box and making sure that, you know, you're having all of your online digital assets spot on, you're finding buyer opportunities out there, you're thinking outside the box, and you're creative about finding opportunities for your clients. That's what an agent should be doing right now, right?
100% agree. 100%
Yeah.
agree.
Cool. Well,
the fact that we're all connected like this. I love technology. I just think you're right, John. Lifestyle properties are going to do so well out of this, because I think the world's now realized that you don't need to travel for a small meeting, like you said earlier. And technology like this is so good and so powerful right now. We can be connected. We're all in 3 different locations, and we're having this great conversation. It's very easy to reach out and have those questions answered by your agent of choice, but actually anyone right now, because a lot of people are focused on digital products and assets. I just think this is such a powerful tool. So congratulations, Tiffany. I know you've been doing this every single day for the last couple of weeks, and I really take my hat off to you. It's a phenomenal tool to really educate and make sure that your clients know that you're there to help them.
yeah, exactly. I think that's what our job is right now. Sure, we may be slowing down slightly. We're still working behind the scenes. We're still doing everything we can, but also I think it's more important than ever to provide value and information to our clients and everyone who's watching, everyone in our market. Make sure that they're the most educated during this time, and that they know what's happening. So, you know, thank you so much, guys, for coming and being on this chat. It's such an honor to be on the team with the McGrath family. And, you know, we'll continue to keep serving our clients, and you'll continue to keep being our leadership team and helping us get through this time and providing us with all the new tools and services that we can to serve our clients as best we can. So thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us. We'll see you.
Stay safe and stay healthy.
Will do.
Thanks, Tiffany. See you guys. See you, Troy.